So the next thing, the last thing actually I wanted to cover with strings is what we call string formatters. So many times you want to, especially if you're going to print output to the screen or you're going to write to a file, you want to combine different strings or convert numbers to text, right? You want to put your numerical data into a text file. So that's basically a string. So there's different ways to do that. The traditional way is this first one here. So let's say we have two strings, A and B, bird and word. So we're then going to do using this sort of percent formatting syntax. So what we do is we're going to create a string which then has two %s in them. So the %s means put a string here, insert a string here, and then what happens is after this string we're going to put a %sign and then a in this case it's a tuple, so it's kind of like a list of two things, and they're in order that we want them to appear. So we have a %s is the %s. So A is going to go in the first slot, B is going to go in the second slot. Now, if we only have one string, we can insert that without these parentheses. Also, there's this %r, which is raw format, so it's a little bit different than %s in that it doesn't fully evaluate that expression, so it keeps those single quotes. This is only useful if you want to like debug your code and you want to see see how it's formatted. But we could easily, if we had, let's just copy this. If we had not used that raw format, if we just used the S format, we get that without quotes. So another thing we can do is, if we just separate strings with commas, we get a tuple. So this is, if we wanted to, like, say, combine, put a number into a string, we could do it this way, but this has the problem that we end up with this like tuple or this list of things that aren't combined. So if we print them, if we put them in a print command, that kind of helps, but it still does this strange thing where it'll add a space between characters whether we want it or not. So it's adding the space between 2 plus 2 and that period. So the better way to do this is why we have this % formatting thing, is that we can say put a %s in the string, and then outside of the string we can use this % formatter to say here's what we want to go in that slot. So this is the original way to do string formatting in Python, but there are a couple other ways that are more advanced that have come out since the original Python. So I want to cover those now. So the original one is what we're going to call % formatting. So this is just where you have, if you have one or more variables you want to put in there, you just use these %s symbols to do that. But with Python 2.6 and later, we have this string format method. So remember how strings have these attributes? So these apply even if the string's not stored as a variable. So here we just have this string, And this string has this format attribute. And what happens when we use this format method is that the values of A and B get stuck in to the string where these curly braces are. So instead of using %s, we're now using these curly braces with the format method. And so those will get inserted, again, in order where they go. However, we have the option of using integers to specify the position, so we can swap those. So we still have A and B in order, A, B, but then we put 1 in the first position and a 0 in the second position. We'll switch those strings that are getting inserted. A third option we have with this format method is to put a variable name into, or a kind of a placeholder into those brackets. And then in the format method, we say we can specify them. So this allows us to really not worry about the order so much when we're writing the code, and we can put things in logically. So we know this one should be an animal, and this one should be a thing. So then we can say here animal thing, and just to prove it to you, even if we switch the order around here, we'll get the same result.
What are there advantages to using the dot format versus image?
Yes, there's a few advantages. So another one advantage is that I haven't used S, have I? No. Okay. So I can say I can do this. So I can store that whole string as a variable, and then I can add the variables later, and I can reuse it. So I could do let's see, this should work. So I can do it different ways, depending on, and I can infinitely. I can reuse that string many times, and it's already ready to go to plug in what I want. And same thing with all these other versions of it. The other advantage is that with this style, with these two styles, there's some more control over ordering of how things get inserted. So there's a third one that came out in Python 3.6 called F strings. So this one is even cleaner. You just put an F right in front of the quote. You can't have a space here. It has to be right there. So it looks a little strange. But what happens here is that it'll just automatically format. It's like a shortcut for the format method. And a cool thing about this is that inside of these brackets, you can then apply methods to those strings. So here, unlike the format, where we have the actual variables where the values are stored is inside that format method, now we actually have the variables in the string itself, but they're in the brackets. And so the advantage of that is that we could have done that here. We could have done it like that. But there's too much going on here. Yeah. But let's do that here. There's a lot of permutations we can do. You can see there's a lot more I'll just do this so we have so we can see that we could have done this same kind of thing here, but this is really clean, right? So you can see, you don't have to your eye doesn't have to go to the end of the string to see what's going to go there. It can just make that operation right in place. This is still new to me, actually. Also, I haven't really gotten used to doing it this way, but I can see why it's really nice once you get the hang of it. Okay.